Welcome back to Noir Alley, our weekly foray through the darker side of classic cinema. I'm your host, Eddie Muller, at Bar 355 in Oakland, California. This weekend, I'm bringing you an obscure movie from 1951 called No Questions Asked, starring Barry Sullivan, Arlene Dahl, and Gene Hagen. These stars, plus the usual application of MGM gloss, make a nervous A out of what was clearly budgeted as a B picture. There was turmoil at the top when this film was made. Dory Sherry was in a power struggle with Louis B. Mayer to control the studio. In the early 40s, Sherry had run the B picture unit at MGM before leaving to take over production at RKO. He'd returned to MGM in 1948 as VP of production, choosing to work once more under Louis B. Mayer instead of RKO's new boss, Howard Hughes. This was not a happy reunion. Mayer and Sherry had entirely different production philosophies and diametrically opposed taste. Mayer favored the cheerful, uplifting movies the Tiffany studio had become famous for, while Sherry leaned toward lower-budget, harder-hitting fare. Now, once Sherry became production chief, MGM was suddenly awash in noir. Side Street, Border Incident, Tension, Scene of the Crime, Mystery Street, The Bribe, and the cream of the crop, 1950s, The Asphalt Jungle, which Louis B. hated, despite its critical acclaim and Oscar nominations. MGM still made signature fare like On the Town, Father of the Bride, and Royal Wedding, but the meter was running on the reign of Louis B. Mayer. Today's film, No Questions Asked, was produced by Nicholas Nayfack, a Sherry comrade who was also the nephew of Nicholas Schenck, president of Lowe's Incorporated, MGM's parent company. It was this Schenck-Sherry-Nayfack combination that proved to be Mayer's downfall. In late 1951, the one-time king of Hollywood was given the boot by the board of Lowe's Incorporated, and Dory Sherry stayed on as the studio's vice president of production. Nick Nayfack had bought the original story for No Questions Asked from freelance writer Bernie Geiler, an idea man with only a few features to his credit. He'd only have around 9 more. In 1953, he moved to television, where he'd turn out scripts for shows like Cheyenne and The Man from U.N.C.L.E. The final draft of No Questions Asked, on the other hand, was by a guy who'd been writing for pictures since 1941 and who would much later have a second career as a best-selling novelist, Sidney Sheldon. He'd worked on many of MGM's ritziest musicals, Easter Parade, Nancy Goes to Rio, and Annie Get Your Gun. But with this assignment, Sheldon was happy to be mucking around in the sordid world of insurance scams and writing smart-mouthed, cynical dialogue that would never have come from the mouths of Jane Powell, Howard Keel, or Betty Hutton.
Now listen, Keeper, I know it's a waste of breath, but I'm going to say it anyway. Will you kindly keep out of this?
It's a pity you're a cop. You'd have made such a good governess.
Sheldon concocts some amusing twists along the way, and these are the movie's unexpected highlights. Scenes that show how refreshing it can be when an essentially comedic writer takes a crack at noir. Assigned to direct was Harold F. Kress. With a couple of short films and his previous picture, a Western featuring Lassie called The Painted Hills, Kress had been promoted from the editing department to the director's chair. He does a decent job, but apparently the move didn't suit him. He directed only one more picture, the B-Western Apache War Smoke, before returning to the editing room permanently. In the 50s, he'd cut such films as I'll Cry Tomorrow, Tea House of the August Moon, and Silk Stockings. He won an Oscar for editing 1963's How the West Was Won, and a second for The Towering Inferno in 1974. He reunited with the screenwriter of No Questions Asked in 1977, when he edited the film adaptation of Sidney Sheldon's best-selling potboiler, The Other Side of Midnight. Now, nobody ever mentions Barry Sullivan among the leading men of noir, but the guy made at least a dozen movies that qualify as examples of the form. And if he didn't have the compelling energy of Richard Widmark or Robert Ryan, or the laconic cool of Robert Mitchum, he was dependable enough to maintain a 50-year career in a very fickle business. Here he has the good fortune of appearing with two of MGM's brightest stars, Gene Hagen and Arlene Dahl. Escaping in the crossfire of the feud between Louis B. Mayer and Dory Sherry, here is No Questions Asked.